Alright, so tonight we'll do Parashat Haazinu, Vzot, Haberacha, the last two parashiyot of the Torah, just so that we can catch up with the various parashiyot. Since the Tuesdays and Wednesdays we have the holidays, and this way we'll be able to go ahead and continue with Bereshit as well. Haazinu is a very, very powerful parasha. It is a short parasha, but it contains very important information. Some of the words are difficult. But what we're going to be doing now is just trying to see the more important lessons of this parasha. Remember, this is towards the end of Moshe Rabbeinu's life. So there's a lot of focus on the future. What's going to happen to the Jewish people? What should they be expecting? He's not going to be around to guide them anymore. Hashem, however, will always be there. The question is, will they be connected to Hashem to understand what He expects of them? So Moshe does something very interesting. In the very beginning of the parasha, he turns to the Shamayim and the Aretz. Instead of turning directly to the Jewish people and giving them the speech, he turns to the skies. He turns to the ground, to the land. And it says, Haazinu Hashamayim v'adabera v'tishma haaretz imrei fi. Hear, heavens, and I will speak, and may the earth hear the words of my mouth. So why would he want to speak to the heavens and to the earth? So one explanation is, they're going to be around. They're always going to be around. From the very beginning of creation till the end of times, they're going to always be around. They will serve as witnesses. People come and go. The people who observed the giving of the Torah, the miracles of the exodus of Egypt, they're no longer around right now. So who's going to be around to remind the Jewish people of their commitment, of their responsibility? The heavens and the earth. Shamayim va'aretz. What this means is that in the same way we were told in Parashat Bechukotai that nature will either cooperate or not cooperate with us, this will be an indication to us that things are not right or things are okay. There was one way that we can tell whether we're doing the will of Hashem is to observe nature. Same over here. He's turning to the heaven and the earth and telling them, you be my witnesses. You somehow remind the Jewish people, you're going to be around forever. You are around now, and you will be around then to tell them if what they're doing is not right. So we will have all kinds of signs, all kinds of miracles. Not everyone will attribute it to a sign from heaven. But nonetheless, they will serve as witnesses of what is to come. And that's a very important point at the very beginning of the parasha, because he's reminding us that in the same way that these creations have rules and are guided by certain physical laws, they follow them. So should you follow the rules, the laws that you have. Another way of understanding this is that Shamayim v'aretz will be there to record all the events. In other words, even though we don't see a machine recording the voices, the scenes of the past, in reality this is what is happening. We don't see it, but this is exactly what's happening, that all the events, the voice and the video, is all being recorded. Man's life during his stay in this world is recorded. And when he heads upstairs, many people who have had a near-death experience have seen their lives go by like a video. So everything is recorded, nothing is lost. So this is another way that I want to explain this, that the Shamayim ve'aretz over here are in a way recording what has transpired, what has happened in the past, and they will continue to record. And when certain things happen in the future, whether it's to the Jewish people or to the rest of the world, you should know that there is some connection to the past. Things don't just happen by chance. Something was recorded in the past, and that is where the topic of reincarnation comes in. So these two, the Shamayim v'aretz, have been recording all the events, because one day people will be accountable for what they did. As later on in Parashat Haazinu, Moshe describes that there will come a time of revenge. So one of the principles being expressed over here is Yesh Din ve'Yesh Dayan. There is justice, there is a judge, even though you may not see it at first, eventually you will see it. And he begins to say as follows, Hatzur tamim pa'olo, kichol derachav mishpat ele emuna v'na'abel tzadik v'yashar hu. Perhaps this is one of the most powerful statements that Moshe Rabbeinu makes towards the end of his life. He reminds us that God, the rock, as he's being called over here, is perfect. Perfect is his work. For all his paths are justice. A God of faith without iniquity, righteous and fair he is. Very important ideas, because some people may not think so, may not know so. But when things happen that are not understood why they are happening, we have to keep in mind this pasuk, this verse over here, that everything is perfect. Everything is by design. There's justice, just that we don't always understand it. But God is fair. And there's a reason for everything. Moshe continues to describe events as they will unfold in the future, talking a little bit about what has transpired from the past, how the Jewish nation was formed, from the very beginning of creation, how the world came into being. And he does so in a song. Haazinu is called a song. And if you see the words, you follow the verses, you see that it's composed in such a way. It's a little bit different than the rest of the Torah. But in order to understand it, it's not enough that we just translate the words. In order to understand what is going on, we would have to learn. One would have to learn Torah, one would have to learn a little bit about what exactly is that Hashem has in mind. What is the purpose of creation? Once we learn a little bit about that purpose of why Hashem created the world, as the Kabbalah teaches and explains, then we will have a better idea of why certain things happen. We will never understand God's ways completely. We're told that they're perfect. That's all we need to know. And that they make sense, even though we don't understand it. However, the more we learn, we will have a little bit of an idea of what's going on. And that's why I would like to say that perhaps this is called a song, because in the same way music has notes. And if you could only read the notes, you will see how beautiful this song is, how special this music is. The entire creation, the entire divine plan for this world is full of musical notes. If we can only read them, we would appreciate it. We would understand a little bit better what's going on. People have no clue. When we study the Torah, we have a clue. That's all. We have a little bit of a clue of what's going on. What is the meaning of all of this? So that is the purpose of this song, perhaps, is to remind us it all fits, just like a song is composed of certain notes, and it's all in harmony. If you can only listen to the tune, you would notice how beautiful it is. In the same way, this creation is in tune. Everything is in tune. Everything makes sense. There's a divine plan. And if you somehow could see the whole thing at once, you would see how beautiful it is and how it makes sense. We can't see all of it at once. We only live so long. We only see one piece at a time. Imagine an entire symphony, but you only get to see a small part, a very small part. You cannot appreciate it. You cannot understand where it's headed. But if you were able to look back, now we in this generation were able to look back and see, wow, look what has happened until now. Look where we are today. Look at technology. Why just now has technology advanced so much? What happened to all the 5,000 years that it was so slow? Nothing really changed. The Zohar speaks about this. But one who does not learn Torah, how should he know? All he sees is that he's born in a generation where people are able to use their cell phones to see each other from great distances, not just to talk. To talk is already something that we take for granted. We can talk on the phone. To see each other? You couldn't do that not too long ago. So there's so many things happening today in various fields, medical field as well, that is incredible advancement. And why now? A lot of questions. One who does not learn Torah at all has no answers. The Torah does offer some explanation of why these things will happen in the future, what you can expect. So when you look at this song, you see how beautiful it is, how it's all by design, and and how it's all divine. However, unfortunately, not all Jews have learned Torah, even though they were given the Torah, even though they committed themselves to follow the mitzvot of the Torah, but to learn the Torah, to learn the midrashim, to learn the halachot, to learn the Kabbalah, not everyone made the time to study the Torah properly, in depth. And therefore, without the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu tells us there will be some very, very sad consequences. Am davar velo chacham. He calls us that we will be a vile and unwise people. Wow, you know what vile means? Ungrateful. Yes, because if we don't know where the blessing is coming from, where our success is coming from, we will not be grateful. We will not realize that this is all from Hashem, including the harsh decrees as well. Why say unwise? The Chafetz Chaim says, it's enough to say vile. Why do you have to add the word unwise? Because the word unwise reveals to you the reason why they're vile. The reason why they've become vile is because they haven't learned. They're not wise. A lot of people make many, many mistakes because they don't learn. And that leads them to be vile, ungrateful, not acknowledging that there is a God in this world who runs the show. Later on, Moshe Rabbeinu says something very similar. Many, many harsh decrees will take place. The Jewish people will go through many, many hard times, and they won't understand what's going on. Let me give you an example. For how could one pursue 1,000? Now, you can understand this both ways. One Jew being able to defeat the many, like the story of Hanukkah, like the story of the 6-day war, where the odds were against Israel, and they won in a miraculous way. So you can understand that this is applying to Israel. How could it be that they were victorious when they were at a disadvantage? But you can also understand it the other way. How could it be that one Nazi can lead 1,000 Jews and they don't rebel against him? They could have easily taken him down, escape 1,000. How could it be? How could one pursue 1,000? So this could apply the other way too, to the enemy. So he says before, the reason this happens is for they are a nation bereft of counsel. Goy ovad etzot hema. Bereft of counsel means they don't seek advice, they don't have the information, they're not learned. And there's no discernment in them. Ve'em bahem tevuna. Think about it. Ask. Learn. Try to figure it out. No, that's what happens when a Jew does not learn Torah. He's at a big disadvantage. And that is what the rabbis always said. The biggest enemy of the Jew is not the enemy that we think. It's ignorance, not knowing. Because that is what will unfortunately disconnect him from the source of all blessings, from Hashem, from the fountain of life. Without Torah, a Jew will not know to do the right thing. He will make many mistakes. So this, unfortunately, has happened many, many times over the history of the Jewish people. Those who were not learned really, really had a hard time. And even those that were learned, if there was divisiveness amongst them, there was politics, there was all kinds of other issues, of course, that also led to trouble. That led to the destruction of the first and second temple, even though we had learned people. We had prophets then. But unfortunately, the vast majority was not doing the right thing. Moshe Rabbeinu, however, is not only talking to those individuals who will be disconnected, who will not observe mitzvot. He's talking even to those people who will observe mitzvot, but the problem is their observance will be very, very superficial. It will be symbolic. For example, they will light the Hanukkah lights. Hanukkah, even though that's a rabbinic decree, it's not a biblical decree. But why are you doing this? Why are you celebrating this? Do you know the real meaning behind the miracle of Hanukkah, what it represents? Or you just like to light the Chanukiah and have some jelly donuts and latkes. That's what people do. Hanukkah, they have jelly donuts, they have latkes if you're an Ashkenaz from Eastern Europe, and they play the dreidel, if you've seen that game. What did you do? Did you, by the way, make that special prayer? Did you say that special prayer in the Siddur? Ala Nisim? Bimei Matityahu? Did you follow the words? Do you recall what miracles took place? What exactly happened in Hanukkah? Why are we so happy? Why are we celebrating? There is a need to understand what we're doing. Otherwise, everything becomes just ritual, just routine, without any meaning. And when something is just routine, it loses its significance in the minds of the person who's doing it. And when he gives this over to the next generation, it's further diluted. If the one that's pouring the hot water is no longer hot, it's cold. What do you think is going to happen when it lands in the next cup? It's going to cool off even more. If you have hot tea to pour, then hopefully what you pour will still remain somewhat hot in the second cup that you're pouring into. But those who only observe the mitzvot in a very, very shallow way, just in a symbolic way, and think that this is what's important, are making a big mistake, and that's why towards the end, Moshe Rabbeinu reminds us, don't think davar reku mikem. Don't think that this is something empty. No, it's just a custom. The Torah and all the mitzvot are not just customs. This is not just tradition. Your life depends on this. Moshe Rabbeinu tells us, remember, your life depends on this. Don't therefore underestimate the value of this. Definitely be careful not to be disrespectful and look down at the mitzvot, thinking that perhaps these were primitive concepts that they held on to in the past. No, your life depends on this. And if you ever think that this is something that is primitive, you should know that you are the one that is rek, you're the one that is empty and primitive. Just because one does not understand a mitzvah, it doesn't make sense to him. Does that mean that it's just illogical and one should, God forbid, dispose of it? No. Perhaps your understanding is limited and you can't figure out what the idea behind it is. Investigate, learn, ask questions, don't just make assumptions. So there's a lot of rekanut, there's a lot of emptiness in people as a result of not learning enough, not being open-minded. Perhaps this is tremendous wisdom that was given over to us, and we know that it's not just wisdom, it's divine, that our life depends on this. What happens sometimes is that people complain, how could somebody religious commit a sin? You see, with all the Torah, he's still committing a sin. He's not any better than those who are not learning Torah. They don't realize the problem is not with the Torah, the problem is with the person. Why are you blaming the Torah all of a sudden? The problem is with the individual. We all have an evil inclination, we all have our weaknesses. So don't blame the Torah. Blame the person. He is the one that's weak. He's the one that's not abiding by this. Take a look at all the great people who lived by the Torah. Don't look at those who unfortunately failed the system, as we say. Don't blame the Torah, blame the person. The rabbis also add that had it not been for the Torah that the Jewish people have, we are azin shebaumot. The Jew is tough, from the toughest of the nations. Could you imagine the Jew without Torah? He would be very, very tough. He would do things that are very, very unconventional, very, very wrong perhaps. He would be a rebel. Now you wonder why they blame us for everything. We're the communists, we're the capitalists, we're everything. Without Torah, we're getting the blame for many, many things, because then perhaps, I don't know for sure, but the Jew had his hands in everything. But that's the Jew without Torah. Azin shebaumot, we would be very, very tough. The Torah refines us, humbles us, directs us. And that is why in this parasha you see that the Torah is being compared to rain. Ya'arov kamatar likhi. In the very, very beginning, may my teaching drop like the rain. May my utterance flow like the dew. Tizal katalim rati. Why compare it to rain? Well, the rain irrigates the land. It brings forth growth, blessing. But that's on condition that you first have some sort of vegetation on the ground, because if you don't have anything, all that rain will cause a lot of mud. When a Jew does not have the tzimchiyah, the vegetation, which we can call the derech eretz, the good character to begin with, he has not worked on his midot, he has not done something to refine himself, then that Torah will just produce mud. It's going to be very, very muddy out there, with only Torah and no derech eretz. The idea is not just Torah, ritual, mitzvot. The Torah is in the end to create, to fashion a human being that is refined. Someone that God could be proud of. Not just another animal. He's special, he's endowed with a soul. He just needs direction. So without the Torah, he has no direction. Even though there are a lot of people out there that do not have any Torah, and they're not Jewish even, and they're fine. They have a good character. They have perhaps a good upbringing and a good education, which helps. But with the Torah, obviously, there would be more than just that. There would be direction. So without that, it could be mud. That's all. So you need the vegetation. Now, once the rain comes down on the vegetation, on the grass, you won't see the positive effects right away. Come back 2 weeks later, after the rain, you say, wow, everything is so green. Everything is flowering. You can see whenever there's a lot of rain, all of a sudden the hills become green. All of a sudden you see all the flowers. Where were the seeds? Where it was underground, but it was there. All you needed was a little bit of rain. So if you have the foundation, you have the derech eretz, you have the good character, one makes an effort to refine himself, then the Torah will yield tremendous growth. But you need that foundation, derech eretz, of working on one's character. So what is the great danger, as he says later on, that they will forget? What will they forget? Not necessarily the Torah, but tishkach el mecholelecha, and you will forget the God who brought you forth, the one who created you. That's where the problem begins. When you forget that all your successes, all your blessing is from Him. Even though you're observing everything, you think that this is the ikar, you think that just the mitzvot is all that is required. No. You need a connection with Him. You need to realize that everything that you have is due to Him. Your life, your family, everything. We can compare this perhaps to a sophisticated machine. Think of a wash machine. It has all the latest technology, a lot of buttons that can do your wash in all kinds of ways. So it's delivered to your home, and you're all excited to begin to use it. You stuff it with your laundry, you put in the soap, you follow the instructions. So you're doing everything right, but it doesn't work. You call up the company, you're upset. They send out somebody, and they said, sir, you forgot to connect the cord to the outlet. The machine won't work, no matter how sophisticated it is, no matter how many buttons you pressed. You need to connect it. If a Jew does not connect himself through prayer, through study of the Torah, just observing the rituals is not enough. A cousin of mine from Brazil asked me the following question. Is it possible to connect to God without prayer? I told him, how else would you do it? He says, through meditation. I told him, well, there are ways that one can attain high spiritual levels. There are all kinds of ways that one can do through which he can attain high spiritual levels, but I can assure you one thing. He will not attain or acquire Yirat Shamayim, the fear of heaven, through meditation alone. The fear of heaven, only if you connect properly through prayer to Him and through Torah. Otherwise, all these other alternative ways are very questionable whether they can really achieve anything. And even if they do achieve something, it will not have enough of a drive in them to lead you to Yirat Shamayim. It could be that it may ignite some curiosity in the individual, more to think more about life in depth. I'm not discounting it completely. great tzaddikim did meditate and engaged in what's called hitbodedut, which is not just meditation, but to be by themselves late at night where it's quiet and to reflect on life and on God. So obviously this type of practices, as long as they were kosher, were acceptable. It enabled the individual to focus, to concentrate. But if you don't connect the cord to the outlet, if you don't connect through prayer and through Torah, it's not enough to be able to develop Yirat Shamayim, the fear of heaven, in a strong way. So therefore it's important to realize that all the minhagim, all the customs that we have, all the rituals, the mitzvot, they by themselves is not the ultimate goal. The goal is what? To connect to Him, to be continuously connected to Him, to receive guidance from Him, to thank Him for everything. We observe the mitzvot because He asked us to observe the mitzvot, but what will the mitzvah do for us? It's not the reward in the end. It will refine us, it will connect us to Him. If the mitzvah does not succeed in connecting us to Him, then there's something wrong with what we're doing, not with the mitzvah. Perhaps you just want to get by. Perhaps you're just treating it as a ritual, as an old custom from 3,500 years ago. No. This is a divine law given to you by Him directly. Your life depends on this. So if we don't see it that way, then it won't do too much for us. Now, we said that without connecting to Hashem through the Torah and through prayer, the Jew will not be as connected. And you may ask, so what? Well, if he's not so connected, what will happen is that whenever he is challenged, he's in a situation which is very challenging or tempting, and he's struggling to retain his Jewishness, his identity, his purity, he will have a hard time. Unless that Yirat Shamayim is there, unless the fear of heaven is there, he may easily break the law. He may easily fall and be tempted. Yes, that's what happens all the time to people who fall. In other words, who don't win the battle against the evil inclination because they didn't even try hard enough. They don't want to. Why not? That Yirat Shamayim in them, the fear of heaven, is very weak. And if the temptation is strong enough, a nice, fat shochad, bribe, that may do it. And I'm going to give you some examples soon of some people who were able to resist the pressures and some people who unfortunately succumb to the pressures. So therefore, the Torah, the prayer, act as connectors to Hashem. They may not be enough either, because we're continuously being challenged, but at least they serve as a continuous reminder. Look who you're turning to, who you're asking for help, whether it's Refa'inu, that He heal us, that He protect us, that He provide for us, regardless what it is. You're reminded of your dependence on Him. Plus, the Torah, by continuously and regularly learning Torah, we're reminded of our tafkid, of our unique mission. That is something that a lot of people forget. They don't think they're so special. They don't think that they have some unique mission. But that's somewhat reminded to us in Parashat Vzot Haberacha. The last Parasha, small Parasha, does not have that much talk, that Moshe directly talks to the Jewish people and gives them a speech. It's more about the tribes of Israel, talking about the Jewish people as a whole. And it's very interesting that he talks to them individually, in other words, to every tribe. What is he doing by pointing out what's so unique about every tribe, the blessing that each one of them has? He's pointing to the mission. Yes, we all have a unique mission. Every tribe was unique. Why have 12? Why not just one? There's something to that too. This is the way Hashem wanted it to be, that we should be 12 tribes. And one tribe should be Kohanim and Leviim, other tribes will be involved in something else. Everyone gets a job. Everyone is special in his way. And this applies to all individuals as well, Jew and non-Jew. We're all here for a purpose. And that is what he brings out. That don't think of yourself as, I'm a nothing, what am I contributing? You were created, you were born, you were brought here. There's definitely a reason for it. Just like every single tribe had a tafkid, had a mission, so do you. But what is the greatest blessing of all? Since we're talking about blessing, Hashem gives us continuous blessings, but the biggest blessing of all is also in Vzot Haberacha. Moshe Rabbeinu points out when he describes the blessing that every tribe received, the skills, the talents, the mission. What do you think the biggest blessing is? Vayhi bishurun melech bitasef rashe am yachad shiftei Yisrael. He became king over Yeshurun. Hashem becomes king over us. When? When the numbers of the nations gathered the tribes of Israel in unity. As the commentaries explain, this is the key word here. The emphasis is on unity. If there is unity, that is when you will be able to experience the greatest blessing of all. As the rabbis tell us, even, God forbid, the Jewish people will be idolaters. Sinful. Idolatry. But they would be united, and Hashem would leave them alone. Obviously, they're accountable, they're responsible. One day, they'll have to pay for that. They will need an atonement. But in the meantime, Hashem will leave them alone. Unity is so powerful. Hashem says, this is what I want to see you. If you have unity amongst you, I will be your king. This is how I will be your king, when you are united, when you are together. So now Moshe Rabbeinu continues and speaks to the individuals who have doubts perhaps. They're far removed from Matan Torah. They don't see open miracles, at least they don't look hard enough and realize that there are always miracles. And they have doubts. They have doubts about Judaism. They have doubts about what they should do in life. Today, unfortunately, we have all kinds of groups, reform, conservative, and each one claims that they're doing something for the benefit or for the welfare of the Jewish people. In reality, it's not true. It's a disservice. They brought about, caused tremendous assimilation, intermarriage. And this leads to trouble. The Torah says so in advance that this is what will happen. But here we have someone who's confused. He wasn't taught perhaps, or even if he was taught, he has his doubts. What should he do? So Moshe Rabbeinu says it's very simple. Even though you may not have had too much of a Jewish upbringing or Jewish education, he says like this: do yourself a favor. Binu shnot dor vador. Remember the days of yore. In other words, look back in history, look back in time. Understand the years of generation after generation. Zechor yemot olam. Binu shnot dor vador. Just look back at the history of your people, the history of the world, generation after generation. And if you need more answers or more explanations to try to figure out what's going on, if the history books are not enough, ask your father and he will relate it to you, your elders, and they will tell it to you. Not everybody has a father or grandfather that can tell him. They may be even more ignorant than he is. But what is the point here? The point is, seek the elders. Seek those people that are learned. Ask them the questions. Don't live your life with doubts. You have questions, that's very good, that's healthy. We wish everyone would ask questions and not remain with doubts. But one way to overcome any hesitation about the veracity, the truth of the Torah, is to look at the history of the Jewish people. This is not something typical. There are many non-Jews, many non-Jewish scholars that are amazed, and they write about it openly, clearly. This is an incredible story, the story of the Jewish people, Mark Twain being an example. Everyone disappears and they're still around, even though they were beaten, even though they were persecuted. What's going on? What is the secret of their immortality, he asks. Immortality. He doesn't answer the question, but the answer is in these parashiyot. Hashem is the one who's been taking care of us. Without that, it's impossible. So therefore, do yourself a favor. You have doubts? Investigate. Look at the history of all the generations. And this will provide for you some of the answers. Yes, there's definitely something going on over here. It's definitely something. There's a divine plan. Look at all the prophecies that are coming true. If he bothered to read the prophecies, he would see that too. And this is not only Jews saying, the non-Jewish world, many Christians who read the Torah, read the Bible, read the prophets, they can see this. It's very, very clear. Now, we don't understand all the prophecies, but we know that a great deal of them, a great many of the prophecies, is about the future, the end of days. And we're living in this time that this is unfolding and happening. We are seeing this, we're observing this. So when a teenager or a young adult, whatever, has questions, look at the history, look at the facts, and you will be amazed. You will definitely be impressed by what you see. But if you don't, then you're going to continue living your life without any purpose, any real direction. And you may be very, very unhappy about what you see, not realizing that there's a reason behind everything. I'm talking about things that happen from above, for which we have no control. Human beings, obviously the reason why they misbehave is because they're not decent people, not decent human beings. That's easy to explain. But I'm talking about major events in the world, war, famine, and the like. Why do these things happen? Earthquakes, so many people get killed. Why is there so much trouble? Why can't we just have peace and live in harmony? What's behind this? What is this world coming to? We need some guidance, we need some help figuring this out. Well, if you were to learn the Torah and the prophets, you will definitely have some idea. Moshe Rabbeinu continues on. The more you learn, the more you will hopefully be grateful to Hashem for everything that He's done for you. Because otherwise, if you're ungrateful, to Hashem you do this, that you rebel, that you're not grateful, you're vile, as we said before. You're unwise. In other words, if you don't come to the conclusion that God runs the show, that He's behind the scenes, that the blessing that we have is all from Him, and you're totally ungrateful, that's terrible, because who are you being ungrateful to? Not another human being. Al Hashem, you're being ungrateful to God, who created you, who did all this for you. Now, it could be that this person has not learned the history and does not realize it yet. He's still ungrateful. He's still wrong for behaving the way he is. Imagine somebody that does know and he's ungrateful. That's terrible. He's a real naval. He's a real vile person. How could you be ungrateful? How could you rebel against him? You know better than that. So these are very, very strong words intended to awaken the Jew to realize, well, wait a minute, if this is true, if it is true, then I better follow it. Otherwise, I don't want to be called vile and ungrateful and all these names. Okay, go ahead and find out if this is true or not. Ask around, investigate it. Big, big danger of somebody becoming ungrateful. This ungratefulness is the greatest disconnect that one can have with God. As opposed to gratefulness is an important key to bring one closer to God. Because if we're grateful for what our parents do to us, they take care of us, they clothe us. The rabbi who wrote the Sefer Hanukkah says that mitzvah of honoring our parents will be a springboard to the mitzvah of loving Hashem. Because if you see what they do for you, you will realize what He does for you. So it's an important mitzvah. Honor your parents. Be grateful for what they did for you. This will help you with being grateful to Hashem. So imagine ungratefulness, the exact opposite, completely distant, not recognizing where the blessing is coming from. But how could you be so ungrateful? Moshe says, you realize to whom you are ungrateful? To Hashem. Without Him, you wouldn't survive. Did you think about that? Moshe Rabbeinu goes on to describe situations where a Jew may become very prosperous, and he may rebel as a result of that. That's what money does sometimes. It drives people crazy. Becoming very, very rich and being preoccupied in just making more and more money. I think it's important to bring this out because imagine if the Torah says that an observant individual, a religious Jew, who becomes prosperous may forget about God. Could you imagine if he does not learn? So in other words, if he's observant, he at one point did learn, but because of the money that he made, that drove him crazy, and it made him at least not focus on God anymore. Let's say he doesn't forget completely. He does in the back of his mind know and believe that God created the world, but he's not connected. all that money is disconnecting. If money can do that, then the more so the lack of learning. The Jew cannot be without the book, without the learning of the Torah, because otherwise he's lost, completely lost. All right, so now that we know the importance of studying Torah, learning about our history, what will happen when we do? One of the first things that will happen to the individual who's serious about learning the history and about learning the Torah, he will notice hashgacha. Hashgacha means divine providence. He will see it everywhere. From the very beginning of the formation of our people till today, he will notice this is incredible. There must be an hashgacha elyona. There must be divine providence. Otherwise, how could you explain everything that happened? So you will notice this divine providence. There are countless stories of hashgacha. You may have seen it in your own personal lives too. Hashgacha, that a lot of people call it coincidences, but we know there's no such thing as a coincidence. I'm just going to share with you one brief story from the Holocaust time that shows incredible hashgacha. You can't explain it in any other way. As you know, after the war finished, there were DP camps for displaced people. There were some children too, young children. Now, adults just went wherever they would be accepted, whichever country gave them a visa. But what about children? There was an organization in New York that tried to get all the children that survived the war adopted by Jewish families, especially couples that didn't have kids. And a lot of families definitely went for it. In other words, they came, stood online, registered, and definitely showed interest in adopting children. There was this one couple that came to adopt a child, just one child, because they were childless. They didn't have any children of their own. And they said, okay, let's take in one. But they were told that recently this girl, who they thought would be a great match for them because of the age, they somehow liked her. They were told by the people who were setting them up for adoption that just recently her brother was found. He survived the war too. And therefore, if you want to adopt her, you need to adopt the two together. We don't want to separate the two. It made some sense. So this lady at first did not want to adopt two, and she says, okay, maybe we'll come back another time, maybe we'll see someone else to adopt. Sometime later, I don't recall how much time went by, they realized that perhaps they should have just taken the two together. And they went back. They weren't sure if they're still there, if they're still available for adoption. They were no, these two kids who they were taking care of are still available for adoption. Okay, so everybody was happy, the kids were happy, the couple was happy. They brought him into their home, a nice, comfortable home. The kids were not lacking anything, and everything was going on just fine. One day, the girl asks her adopted mom, what are you doing with the picture of my Bubby on your piano? Bubby is a grandmother in Yiddish. What are you doing with the picture of my Bubby on your piano? She says, your Bubby? What do you mean your Bubby? This is my mother. So they spoke a little bit. I mean, this is not a little girl. She's already 6 years old, whatever. She does remember. It turned out that these two kids were the children of this woman's sister.
Wow.
Who perished in the Holocaust.
Wow.
Look at how the Hashgacha, the divine providence, brought together the kids that they should be adopted by the sister. What better home, if not the home of a sister, who very much wanted to have kids of her own, but she did not. And here she was raising her sister's kids. Incredible Hashgacha. And there are many stories like that. But the Hashgacha over the entire Jewish people is something very, very incredible. You know, it's something that we can talk about day after day and never finish. The countless stories that exist, some of it which has been documented, is incredible. But we need to learn. We need to read about it. Otherwise, we have no clue. What does Hashgacha really mean? all the prophecies that have come true. That in itself is incredible, because it shows that this is all true. And this was said thousands of years ago. You see the Hashgacha. What was promised is being delivered. How? Because there's a Hashgacha. There is a divine hand behind all of this. Now, something very special will follow after one understands what Hashgacha is. Hopefully, what will develop in him is midat habitachon, the quality of trust in God, that one can rely on him. A lot of people have some level of emunah. Emunah means I believe in him. But do you trust him that he takes care of all your needs, that you can pray to him and he will listen to you? Bitachon is a much higher level emunah than just plain emunah. And not everybody has enough bitachon, unfortunately. If they did, their lives would be very, very different. Bitachon is so important that I'd like to compare it to a lock on a bracelet. Have you ever seen people who have an expensive bracelet? They don't want it to fall. So there's a little lock, a clasp, is I think it's called. Otherwise, there's always the possibility that this necklace could fall off, and it has happened to women that they've lost their very, very expensive diamond bracelet. Had they had a lock, it wouldn't happen. So Judaism as a whole, the mitzvot, the observance of the mitzvot, is a bracelet, is a beautiful gold bracelet. But if you don't have a lock, it could fall. I call bitachon, the trust that one has in God, the lock of this bracelet. All that you want to preserve, and you don't want to lose, make sure that you put this lock on, the lock of bitachon. Because what it will do for you is it will continue to remind you, even in hard times, there's a divine hand, there's divine providence, God is aware of me, I can pray to him, I can cancel bad decrees, I can do teshuvah and repent, and he will accept me and forgive me. All of that comes from bitachon, that I trust that he will do so. I trust that he will bring Mashiach too. I have no doubt about it. In the same way that all the prophecies are coming true, I know everything else will come true as well. That even the dead will rise. I trust him. Now, certain things I trust because I have experience. He has proven himself in the past. I see this throughout history. Yes. Are you sure you trust him? Well, people are put to the test, and not everybody passes the test. Imagine somebody who's a real estate broker. And real estate brokers don't have a steady income always, unless they're very, very good. Whenever they sell something, they make money. So imagine a real estate broker who hasn't made a penny for 6 months. And he has a lot of expenses. How does he feel? He has a mortgage, he has tuition to pay. Where is he going to take the money? 6 months, he hasn't sold anything. Finally, he gets a listing. A very, very special listing in Bel Air. Now, imagine making 6% on a $25 million estate. That's what the estate is worth. And you get the listing. This is special, no? You can live for an entire year from 6% of 25 million. Right? I think it will pay for most of your bills. There's one catch. You want the listing, you have to come. This guy tells you have to come to my house Friday night. It's Shabbat, and sign. You have to do something that's forbidden on Shabbat. Sir, if you don't sign on Friday night, I'm going to give this listing to another company. Can't you wait till Saturday night? No, it's only Friday night. This is your only chance. I'm doing you a favor. What do you think he's going to do? If he's a smart aleck, there are people like that, smart alecks. I'm going to use my left hand, not my right hand. I remember learning that if I do it bishinui, with some sort of a change, not the regular way you write, that God will forgive me. Sir, you don't understand. If you had bitachon, you would know this is not meant for you. It's a test. They're testing you. Don't you realize this? They're looking at you. What are you going to do? If you don't pass the test, you're in trouble. If you pass the test, you're going to be blessed. When? I don't know, but you will be blessed. This is a test. They're not going to send you a blessing in a forbidden way. This is not a blessing. This is a great blessing. I've been waiting for this. No, it's not. If it's forbidden for you to do what it is, to sign. So some people don't have enough bitachon, and they fall for it. But now let me share with you a story of someone that had tremendous bitachon. And he was about teshuvah. That means he was not religious from birth. He eventually became more and more religious. This happened in Mexico City. And he became so religious that he took upon himself a very special commitment. Friday, after 12 o'clock noon, my business is closed. I go home, I get ready for Shabbat. I don't do any business whatsoever, no matter how profitable it is. He was having a hard time selling a building. You know how like some cars are lemons? This building was like a lemon. Nobody wanted to buy it for some reason. Finally, he had some buyers from Sweden, investors that came to look at the building, and it took several days to negotiate a price, and they were almost getting there. But it was Friday noon, 12 o'clock noon, and they're not done. And he says, gentlemen, I'm going home. I'm sorry, but I go home at this hour. And they told him, listen, if you don't stay a couple more hours until we finish the deal, we're going to go home too. And we're not going to buy the building. I said, you can do whatever you want, but I'm going home right now. And he went home and he lost the deal. 1985, there was a big earthquake in Mexico City, if you recall. I remember it. I was there afterwards. A lot of buildings were smashed, collapsed, a lot of fatalities. And as a result of that, the government needed office space. This man's building, not one glass shattered. The whole building was intact. Everything was perfect to move in. And they gave him a better price than those investors from Sweden were going to offer him. So did he lose out? No. Not only didn't he lose out, he gained from having bitachon and trust in Hashem, from keeping to his commitment. People would have a problem with competition too. Somebody opening up a similar store across the street, they don't have bitachon. How are they going to deal with the competition? You have to have bitachon, otherwise it becomes very, very difficult. Just to end, in Parashat Haazinu, many important principles of Judaism are stated. Even though it's in a poetic way, nonetheless, they're important principles. And one of those principles is that yesh din veyesh dayan, there is a judge. Even though we don't see it, we said he's just, he's fair, he's perfect. Even though we don't always see it, but there will come a time when we will see it. There will come a time that God will avenge all the blood of the innocent people that was shed by murderers throughout history. We have a very, very short memory. We can't remember everything. There's people today who are denying the Holocaust already. We can't remember all the facts, all the people that were killed, victims to persecutions. Hashem remembers them all. There is a time that is fast approaching where there will be revenge. That is part of justice. In order to, even out, if you can use those words, the past, things that were wronged to people. If there is justice, then it has to be that Hashem will even it out somehow. So that time is coming. And because of that, we should never give up hope and thinking, so many Jewish souls were lost. What's going to be of them? No. There will be Tchiyat HaMetim, the dead will rise. This is all part of our emunah. This is all part of what we believe in. It's not just part of our emunah, it's one of the principles of our emunah. That we believe that this will happen, the Mashiach will come very, very soon.
Amen.
In his last speech, if you ever ask anybody what were the last words that Moshe said in his life, people might not remember it. It's in Parashat Vzot Haberacha. Very, very special words, and I think this is something that needs to be emphasized. Moshe reminds the Jewish people in his last speech, the last words, right before he dies, Ashrecha Yisrael, mi chamocha am noshav Adonai, magen ezrecha. Basher cherev gavatecha v'kachashu evecha lach batav avotem utidroch. Fortunate are you, O Israel, who is like you, people delivered by Hashem, the shield of your help, who is the sword of your grandeur. Your foes will try to deceive you, but you will trample their haughty ones. What's the meaning of all this? He's reminding the Jewish people, you're fortunate. You really are. You are delivered directly by Hashem. You are protected directly by Hashem. That protection is from above. That protection is not through the air force that you have, through the military that you have. that great might that you have, be careful. That great might and that great blessing and success that you've had throughout our history is from Hashem. Like one non-Jew told the rabbi, Rabbi, how powerful is this sheep that is surrounded by 70 wolves and it is able to survive? And the rabbi tells him, no, you have it wrong. It's not the sheep. It's the shepherd from above who scares away the wolves. If it wouldn't be for him, we would not be able to survive. So Moshe Rabbeinu reminds every Jew, don't forget that. You are privileged. You are fortunate. You are special and unique that you have Hashem's protection. Amen.